Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TV show EU Deal After Brexit. A few days after the European Parliament historic vote establishing Brexit, we'll talk today about the consequences of Brexit, in particular in the field of data protection. My name is Sarah Rochdi, student in Master 1 in International and European Law. And to talk about that with me today, my colleagues, Augustine and Hacques. Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah. Thank you for having me with you today. So, as of this Friday, we can finally say that Brexit has happened, and thereby we're entering the transitional period that we have been awaiting. So, this transitional period starts the countdown clock for the UK to have the legal implementations necessary for it to finally exit the European Union. And among these implementations, we're going to see changes on the level of customs, trade, but most importantly, where we're going to be focusing on this report today, data protection law. So in order to better understand the implications of data protection law with the leave of the UK, and in order to understand how new arrangements are going to have to be tailored to the situation, please can you enlighten us on what those implications are going to be like?
Yes, of course. As a first step, it should be noted that at the end of this transitional period, the United Kingdom will be considered as a third country according to the GDPR. This new status may be a constraint, particularly in regard to data transfer. Indeed, under the GDPR, in order to a EU country to transfer data to the third country, there must be either an adequacy decision from the European Commission. It means that the European Union has considered as an equivalent the third country legislation, or it can be a safeguard that the third country has a safeguard guarantees, or that the transfer in question fall within the exception list in the GDPR. However, the transitional period organizing the Brexit will probably put in place an adequacy decision allowing definitive permission for data protection and data transfer for the United Kingdom. Furthermore, in general, data coming from the European Union will be protected under the UK law and under the extraterritoriality principle of the GDPR, UK company will be obliged to apply the GDPR if the information relates on EU nationals. So even with Brexit, our data will still be protected in the UK.
Hopefully, yes. Thank you, Sarah, for this practical overview of the implications of Brexit. Now, if you allow me, I'd like to most specifically focus on the public sector and the implications of data protection for the public sector. So I'll begin by cite a 2019 report from the Platform for International Cooperation on Undocumented Migrants, which pointed out that it seems that in its General Data Protection Act, the new one, the United Kingdom seems to be leaving more room for a broader exemption, immigration exemption to the GDPR. So this is interesting in this context because this exemption is allowing the United Kingdom for a broader discretionary power, which means that it will have more possibilities for the processing and controlling of personal data. However, this is interesting as this concern seems to be clashing with the mere principles of the European Union, which is one of uniformization of the data protection law in order to better protect personal data and individual data. So in a way, this Data Protection Act from the United Kingdom is already challenging the unity that was already built in the European Union. So, as you said previously, it's not that the general principles of the GDPR are not being implemented. They are obviously being implemented. But the real question relies on the interpretation of the GDPR and how the overall goal seems to be reinterpreted by the United Kingdom in order to fit in a different scheme, which is one of broader discretion for the government and its powers. Furthermore, I'm going to focus on another organization, a British civil society organization, Big Brother's Watch, that reported on a different issue, which is regarding police profiling technologies. And these technologies are quite a new framework within data protection law, so there's not a lot of case law about it. And what's particularly alarming is that it seems that it's not compatible with a lot of fundamental rights provided by the icl. However, in the UK, it seems to be a technique that's proliferating. So the real question here is that thereby the CGEU is going to have to draft new case law, and it's going to be confronted with a lot of challenges in order to establish the limitations of such techniques. However, as we both know, now the UK has officially left the European Union. It's not the subject of the CGEU anymore, and it's not going to be able to impose its jurisdiction on the United Kingdom, and instead the UK is rather going to be relying on national authorities. So in that way, it's quite limited, the power that the European Union has in order to filtrate those types of mechanisms that seems to be violating the European Convention Fundamental Rights Principles. However, what we still need to be reminded of is that in the case of mass surveillance, for example, or national security interests, there are already existing case law in which the CGEU decided on limitations for the protection of fundamental rights of the European Convention on Human Rights. And those mass surveillance programs notably involve similar types of technologies. So that legal grey hole is visible, but not completely empty. There's already some present legislation on that topic. So what we need to particularly focus on as of today is how this compensation is going to be established and how the balance between fundamental rights and mass surveillance, or measures that are quite unknown as of today, are going to be tackled by both the European Union and the United Kingdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Augustine, for your intervention. In any case, we will closely monitor this transition for the United Kingdom in terms of data protection. Thank you for your time and attention, and see you next time for another report for your deal after Brexit. Thank you.